Part 2 of Scream.
A continuation, in-depth discussion of
Horror
breakdown
review.
of the scenes and the deaths
19.
of the legendary Father of the Death. 1996 Scream.
Ghostface, as we all know.
Was crazy.
Alright, so we left off with the annoying scene.
No, it's the first confrontation between Ghostface and Sidney in the franchise.
Okay, we can cut to that.
And Ghostface comes out of the closet fresh out of baking it out. And he struggles with Sidney, and it's vintage Ghostface, of course. Like, stumbling over everything. Of course, you didn't even have to say anything.
Wow.
No.
Just on the volume.
And then Sidney ends up running up the stairs, and the phone's off the hook for some reason.
Yeah, of course, it's script convenience that the phone doesn't work. She tries to call a caption.
Oh, and she's like on her 90s dial-up internet where she dials 911.
Oh, yeah,
she's
she
like on
tries to go
instant
out
messenger with
Yeah,
a
the phone doesn't
dispatch
work,
on
so she
911.
goes to the computer, and it's like, no, and it's like freaking, it's like Navy SEALs, like SOCOM, like screen, like the computer.
No, that's the sounds they add in the editing room.
That's what I'm saying. It's the same sound on the computer, like.
Anyway, and that's when her
typing.
boyfriend Billy Loomis, named after the legendary Dr.
Yeah,
Loomis
she's about to
from
run out the
Halloween,
door, and he comes
shows
in at
up
the
in
same
the
time.
window with his 96 cell phone. His flip phone like pops out,
falls out of his pocket, and she's like, she
dies of AIDS.
She assumes that it's him.
No, that's what Peter Griffin said on the Cleveland show the other night.
Alright, so she sees the phone, she thinks it's him, the cops show up.
And his gloves, his Ghostface gloves, like, freaking drop on the ground. And that's when Doofy, like...
I thought the gloves only dropped on the ground in the scary movie.
No. I think it shows it in Scream.
Nah, dude, it only showed the cell phone.
Alright. So then Doofy, like, reading...
So Doofy, yeah, she starts running out the front door, and it's Doofy, and he's got the mask. And he's like, oh.
And he's foaming at the mouth.
He's
and
like,
he starts
sorry,
reading... And he starts reading Loomis's rights. He's like, do you wish to waive your right as an attorney?
Oh, that part's freaking hilarious, because then freaking he just walks away from her because of from reading the rights hat like 3 minutes or like a second into it.
And that's when Rose McGowan...
the sheriff shows up.
That's when Rose McGowan shows up.
Yeah, and she's like, Doofy.
In her 90s clothes, so...
She's like, I'm taking Sidney.
She's
like,
yeah,
in the ambulance.
Doofus. She's coming with us, Doofus. Shut up.
And she's got like the freaking sheriff's jacket on.
And then Gail Weathers shows up in her freaking neon freaking working women's outfit.
Her working women's outfit.
You know, there used to be like commercials for those.
We're not sexist. You know, no, it's 'cause we're talking about the 90s women work outfits.
The Myers Fan 25 is he hates fat bitches.
Wow.
That's what he said in his H2O review.
No, I know. Look it up.
It's Myers Fan 25.
The Myers Fan 25. Alright, so...
And there's Chief talking to Loomis at it's the sheriff talking to Loomis.
It's a classic scene, scary movie.
And he's just like, tell me, son.
He's like, I want you to look at a couple
what
photos.
were you doing with a cellular phone?
Oh yeah, it cuts right here.
With a cellular telephone.
And it cuts to like the in-depth.
He's like, everyone's got one, son. It's the 90s. He's like, everyone's got one,
everyone
sheriff.
got one. He's like, no, that's 2005 when everyone got the cell phone. Not now.
That's by 2004 when everyone's 16 and up had a cell phone.
Alright, they'll be like 5th graders nowadays with the cell phone.
They'll be like 5-year-olds with a cell phone.
I know.
And he's just like, and then Billy Loomis's dad, he was high up on the Ghostface rankings for Scream 4 of who would be. There was a bunch of people on message boards that would be like, oh, I think Ghostface is gonna be Billy's dad. Anyway, he's in this scene. He's just like, you were out last night, and they're
he's
talking.
on his business trip.
He's just like, Sidney told that you showed up at her freaking house the other night. He's just like, did you happen to go by Casey Becker's house?
Yeah, they're assuming that, you know, the boyfriend, you know, freaking killed the first girl, Drew Barrymore.
And then Billy Loomis turns around and he gives Sidney the poker face.
Oh yeah, he turns around and he's just like, Sidney, like, they telekinesis.
He's the bad boy.
He telekinesis tells her, like, wasn't me.
No, then they totally set up this scene where they take Billy in handcuffs and they pull him out in
Yeah,
front
and
of
they walk
Sydney.
right
They
past
totally
her.
set
Sydney's
it up.
got the sheriff's jacket
Wes
wrapped around her.
Craven totally
Like she's cold.
lazily set this up.
She's cold.
Like,
She's traumatized.
they did it in like one take, no editing.
Play your part.
No, and as it happened, they take her. Then Rose like comes right past the killer, freaking Billy Loomis.
Yeah,
Like,
and Doofy's like, "Yeah, I'll take you out the back. We can avoid all the cameras out front."
oh, then it cuts to Gail, and she's like, "Oh, is there a
Yeah,
back place in
yeah,
here?"
she's talking
And
to
they're
her-
like, "Yeah, it's in the back."
Yeah,
you
the
fucking
reporter.
moron."
The reporter.
She's like, "Is there a back place?"
The
Yeah.
reporter
it's
Gail's
right-
talking to her camera guy, and she's like, "Is there a back to this place?" At the same time, if they're going out the back, and then freaking, and then
She's like
Sydney's
an
like,
inherited, like dyed-haired,
Sydney's
dumb
like,
blonde. and
Sydney's
that's
like, "No, let me talk to
Courtney
this
Cox.
reporter."
Pre-Botox.
And then she's just like, so she's talking to her about her book because she's the reporter who.
Hold up,
worked
before
on her
that, they
mom's
show the
murder.
father death costume. And he's just like, they sell this at nickel and dime price everywhere across the state.
Oh, I know.
That's what Dewey said. And he's like, you think you did this?
And he's like, they sell this at
And then-
Halloween, #1 seller.
They sell this at
Every
Halloween
Halloween.
USA from September until October when they rent out the cheap
Since
place.
this movie came out, every single Halloween.
He's just like, you think you did it, Sheriff? And the Sheriff's like, in 1976, I'd
He's
say
like, these
no,
kids, I'd
but
say no, but nowadays, these kids, I don't know.
These kids with the dial-up internet,
These
they
kids
got a
with-
wild imagination.
Yeah.
And they've seen a lot of horror movies. They've gone through the
These
Jason,
kids-
the Friday the 13th
These kids
franchise.
stealing music off Napster nowadays.
We gotta mention this. The early 90s, there wasn't that many good horror movies in the 90s. Like, the franchise pretty much dried up at that
I
point.
went through that 90s action phase.
Yeah, where they like shot it like an action movie instead of shooting it like with like a suspenseful horror movie feel.
It'd be a
you know what I'm
drama
saying,
horror.
Elman?
That's what it'd be in the 90s.
You know what I'm saying, Eric V?
It'd be a drama horror like the freaking, what's that one Rain movie, you know, freaking,
Hard Rain.
wow. Exactly.
That movie's alright. And he's just like, anyway,
Hardcore.
that's
90s.
when they meet Gail out back, and she's like, "Oh, I'll send you a copy."
She's like, send you a copy of my book about, you know, your
And
mom's murder.
Sydney
And she's like-
punches freaking Gail, and they speed it up like a film.
Yeah, and then freaking Doofy, like, just grabs her and he, like, ushers her to the cop car. And he's like, oh, it's okay. Nice. And he's like, nice shot.
They totally make Doofy the dweeb, and he's like 10th in rank at this small town, and he's just like,
Yeah, earlier when he was talking to his sister in there before, after he showed him the ghost costume to the sheriff, he's like, hey, you treat me like a deputy, a man of the law here. And
Anyway,
she's like,
so he
she's like,
brings
okay, Deputy
Sydney-
Doofy.
so he brings Sydney back home for like the sleepover, and Ghostface ends up calling Sydney there.
Yeah,
And
the
then
mom
Sydney's
comes
just
in.
like, who is this? No, and then she's like, and Ghostface is like, you'll find out soon enough.
Oh.
Uh,
And then Doofy comes out with his gun.
in his whitey tighties and
with
his
his gun in the
vacuum.
hallway, and he takes a phone
And his
he's
vacuum.
Like, and he's like, hello.
Oh
That's
yeah.
hilarious.
And also people like would complain about Scream 4, like, oh, there's too much comedy to it. The series has always had comedy to it.
Yeah, it's a perfect amount of comedy
It's the perfect blend of sick comedy and
and horror.
reference to an awareness of other horror movies and the rules of it. That's why it's obviously one of our favorite franchises, along with a lot of people's favorite.
Alright,
So then
that
next
cuts.
day-
It's like Doofy, and he's like, we're gonna cross-reference
Next
every cell
morning,
phone. He's like,
Doofy didn't wake and bake for sure.
he's talking to the sheriff, and sheriff's like,
No, no, shut up. It's like Cotton Weary in prison. The
Oh,
news
yeah,
of
on the
that.
news, on the news when they're eating breakfast.
It's the subplot that we're slowly
So
finding
Cindy
out
and her
about.
friend Rose and Doofy and her mom and parents are freaking
And it's
watching
Liev
the news.
Schreiber from The Omen. And he's just, no, then Doofy's like, we're checking every cell phone in the county, Sid. Hang in there. And then he takes her to school, and
He's
he's
like,
just
we're
would you
checking
shut-
every 90s
stop it,
Nextel. We're checking we're cross-referencing every 90s Nextel.
No, then they show up at school, and like some random extra reporter comes up to Sydney, and she's like, "How's it feel to almost get brutally
Yeah,
butchered?"
they just sheriff, drops him off, and it's all the reporters around the high school. And right when they
People
get
need
out,
to know how to feel.
Yeah, it's the reporter just gets up in her face. She's like, people need to know. People have a right to know. How does it feel to be attacked? It's freaking hilarious.
And then it's the infamous Gale and Sydney showdown.
Or Cindy comes up to Gale, and Gale's like, "Hey, stop right there," like a freaking 5th grade
And they're
teacher.
talking about
Like, stop right there.
They're talking about Gale's freaking book, how she wrote.
They're talking about the
murders
case
in Woodsboro.
Yeah, they're talking about her mom's
that
case.
are based on
her
the
mom's
first
murder.
all the stab movies, 7 stab movies, all based on the Gale Weathers novels.
And she's just like, yeah.
Someone was gonna do it. I had to be the. And she was like, yeah, you had
She's
to be
like,
the bitch that did it.
No, she's like, his story never changed once.
With your
And
conspiracy.
I think he's an innocent man. So the reporter, Gale thinks that he's innocent, and freaking Cindy thinks that he's guilty.
Gale's like, I know that they had sex, and then Sydney's like, he's lying.
No,
He raped and he butchered her.
Yeah, he raped her.
His blood was all over
My
her
mom
clothes.
wouldn't touch her. He raped.
He would
and
not
murdered
touch her.
It's
She's
pretty-
in denial that her mom's a slut. She's like 16-year-old Queen Amidala, naive.
It's in the script.
It's in script. She's the horror virgin.
Let's see here. So then they freaking.
She's not the dumb blonde with the
No.
big teeth.
So then it cuts them in school. In the hallway.
And what? And he's just like, have you seen Billy? And he's just like, what? After you branded him the Candyman?
After you brand him as the murderer?
No, his heart's broken.
And then freaking
Shaggy.
some kid freaking runs through the hallways dressed as freaking Father of
Ghostface.
Death, run through with the mask on, like like throwing his hands up everywhere.
And Stu loves it. So
He's
you,
like,
so you
what?
tell he has appreciation
He's like,
for
what?
horror
It's like,
movies
he's like,
throughout.
what? It's like Christmas around here.
And then she runs into Billy. That's the
Yeah, she
infamous
runs
scene
away
with
from that.
freaking what's his
Turns the
name?
corner and runs into Billy, and he's like, "You don't think
Luke Wilson,
He's like,
like
what?
playing Billy, like.
what? You don't think I'm still the killer? Do you?"
He's just like, it could have been me.
She's like, no, and he's like, no.
He's like, it couldn't have been me. I was resin scraping my bowl, and he puts up
And he's
his
like,
butt
see, and
fingers.
he puts up his
And
hand.
he's like one of those bad kids
No,
at school
no,
who
no,
like
no,
to
no.
brag about,
No,
hey,
this-
see, I got a detention.
this is
I'll
one
show
of-
you their detention slip.
It's one of those kids in school, no, that would literally do that. They would like get fingerprinted at the freaking
And not
cop
wash his
station,
hands.
not wash his hands, and come to school the next day and be like,
Just
check,
for proof.
be
Like,
like,
hey,
check it out, man. I got fingerprinted.
I can't do shit now,
I
man.
got fingerprinted, dude.
Nah, man. I
I'm
can't
grounded.
bust into that old factory.
I'm
and
grounded
steal
till I'm
those
18.
hubcaps.
See, I got the resin fingers to prove it.
I'm in the system, man.
I got the butt
I've been
fingers.
documented.
Check it out right here on my hand.
He's just like, come on, Sydney, your mom died a year ago. He's just like, I want my girlfriend back.
Yeah, and he's
He totally goes 17-year-old,
And then she's like, I'm
like
sorry-
testosterone.
Yeah, and then
cock
she's like,
on
I'm
him.
sorry my test. No, she's like,
I'm
I'm sorry
sorry
my
my
traumatized life
Is an inconvenience
to your perfect
existence.
hilarious.
He's just like, what?
and he's like, what? Wait, Sydney. And she runs away, like she's freaking Janie.
Sydney. And then it cuts to freaking the Fonzie scolding the kids.
cuts to Fonzie, the principal. And
Scolding the kids that
and
were
he's
wearing
just
the
like-
Father Death costume.
And he's just like, what's the
And he's just like, you both are expelled.
no, he's just like,
No, and he goes dead sober serious on him. They put that in the script, like, hey, make sure the Fonz is dead sober
he's
serious.
like,
in the
fair.
scene.
And oh, yeah, and the kids are like, oh, come on, Prince, that's not even fair to get expelled. And he's just like, fair? And he's like, fair would be to rip your insides out and hang you from a
No,
tree.
if this was a freaking like teenage drama
The
like
lines are
movie, they'd be
hilarious.
like, "Hey, you're expelled from prom. Give me your prom tickets," and he'd cut them up. But it's a horror movie, so it's like you're
Yeah, and
expelled.
he's got the scissors and he's cutting up the freaking ghost face mask.
No, then okay, this is one of the most blown parts of the movie. This is the Sydney in the bathroom scene, and she starts
She goes
hearing
to the
those girls
bathroom,
gospel.
She hears the girls gasping. She's
Blake
like,
Lively
and they're like,
style.
yeah, I think her mom was a total slut, and I think Cindy's the
She
killer.
was just like,
Yeah,
she
think about
figured
it.
out that homicide was in this year because
It's
suicide
very
was
more.
out.
It's very more therapeutic.
She found that out from Ricky Lake. That's what they put in a Ricky Lake one.
Alright, so
And then
Cindy's in the
then
stall.
Ghostface pops out of the
Yeah, so
woman's
the
stall
chick's leading the
randomly.
cheerleader, and it's like one of the
First
French.
few times you see this, you think it's like a dream sequence or something. And no,
No, not at all.
no, we forgot the Wes Craven cameo also when he's with
Oh yeah, the
Fonz.
principal.
He's wearing the
The
freaking,
principal, yeah, the kid's already left, and he's like he's putting on the mask and looking in the mirror, And then he hears the door knocks and he looks out there and it's a janitor wearing freaking Freddy Krueger
Anyway,
outfit.
back to
He's got the Freddy
Ghostface in the
Krueger
bathroom stall,
hat.
the girls' bathroom stall, and they treat it like
And the
filler.
shirt.
And Sydney just runs out.
Oh yeah, they treat
and doesn't tell the
It's
principal
like
anything.
solely, totally insignificant because
and
Scream
they
is
just
there.
cut it. Like
you know,
she just
he
ran to
puts his
like
feet
fourth
down the
period,
stall,
like art class.
puts on the
sober
freaking
as
the
hell.
gown, chases her out, and she just runs out.
Like it was a dream or something. And then it cuts to freaking Gail flirting with Dewey.
Yeah, and she's
to
like,
try
hey.
and get info on the case.
She's
even
like,
though
hey,
Dewey's like 10th in command.
She's like, hey, is he still a
Even though he doesn't know shit.
She's like, is her father still a suspect? And he's like, we're not counting her out. We're not counting him out. And then she's just like, she's like, I'm popular around.
Males 18 to 24.
And he's like, I'm 25.
I was 25 for a whole beer.
But then he's like, ma'am, I was 24 for a whole year. He's like, you do look cuter in person.
And I held that beer. I didn't even drink it.
She's like, oh. She's like, call me Gail. And he's like, I will. Wow. Alright, we're done with
They
this.
just throw that love in there for filler, basically.
Sonic cuts.
Like to just connect the main cast characters. And then they talk about the party at Shaggy's. And this is where Rose McGowan's like wearing the
because it goes to the
sweater.
No, it goes to the principal over the freaking AP right there, over the audio system, and he's like, due to the recent events, he's like, all school and classes have been canceled.
Yeah, so they're having a freaking
and then he's like,
party
and there's a
on the
curfew,
weekend
9 o'clock sharp.
Oh, and it shows like
So
extras
Shaggy's
in
like,
town,
oh.
like cutting, like closing everything down, like, hey, close for curfew.
Yeah, even though it's like bright as sunny
No,
day.
it cuts to the Fonz. No, this is the Wes Craven cameo when it cuts to the Fonz.
Yeah,
and he gets stabbed.
You already said it.
So then he gets stabbed by Ghostface.
Yeah, Ghostface kills the principal. Like that comes out of nowhere, freaking. And they treat it like nothing for the rest of the movie until later on, till towards the end, and they talk about it. But it still like went by so quick. So the principal gets killed by Ghostface.
It was an
in his
okay
office.
death. They could have made it more.
Yeah, he comes out of the closet and just stabs him.
Scream deaths are never that elaborate, really, because it's just a knife,
It's just a guy coming after you.
Stab, that's what they do. They stab.
Stab. Alright, so then it cuts.
And Sydney talks about, we're going to go for another minute here, then we're going to go to part 3.
So then Sydney starts talking about the,
Cotton Weary theory, and she was like, if I was wrong, Cotton is still, no, she's like, if I was wrong about Cotton, then the killer's still out there. And then Rose is like, that's some Wes Carpenter bullshit. They combined Wes Craven and John Carpenter's
combine the name. Let's tell you all the horror references and throughout the movie.
So Rose is a bimbo. She doesn't know that much about horror, obviously.
Yeah, they make it seem like, hey, she's a 16-year-old.
She sleeps with her movies.
Wow.
No, that's what some YouTuber has on their page, and you're like, wow.
And they're like, hey, thumbs up if you
No, and it cuts to Frankenstein playing at the video store.
Oh, it's tight.
Great. That's all he has to say.
Wow, now it cuts to the video store, and it's Randy and freaking Shaggy. And they're talking, and he's like freaking putting away videos because he works there. And he's just like, yeah, I wonder. He's like,
he was like, we had a run-in at the mass murder section.
He's like, yeah, everybody's checking out the horror.
No, then it's like Billy freaking
over there across the way talking to some chick inside the horror section. He's like,
who's not even high.
He's like, wouldn't it be a cliche
if you were the only suspect in a senseless bloodbath, would you be
hanging
standing
out
in the horror section? He's like, and then Shaggy's like, nah, man, you didn't do anything. Matthew Lillard.
He's like, Billy, nah, he's got resin hands. That's it.
Jamie Kennedy and Matthew Lillard. There was great acting in the cast. We have to mention.
Pretty good acting, yeah.
And he's just like, why did the cops let him go, genius?
And he's like,
this is standard horror
101.
Prom Night Revisited.
This part's hilarious. He's like, the cops would save some time if they just watch Prom. Shit's hilarious.
And he's just like, what's the motive then, genius? And he's just like, maybe Sydney didn't want to sleep with him.
And he's like, oh, what? She wants to go out with you? And he's
There's
like,
a very simple formula.
He's like, maybe.
Maybe I get my chance, Mikey.
So,
he's just like, maybe you're the killer. And he's like, I would be the prime suspect. I do love horror.
Oh yeah, because then Billy
All right,
comes
now
up.
we're gonna before we get at 20
Billy
minutes.
comes up to him now, because Billy comes up to him and freaking
just like-
scares him, cuts him off, and he's like, "I think maybe you're the killer." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I would be the prime suspect." Yeah, as you were saying.
All right, we're just gonna keep on going.
No, we're not gonna keep on going. We're gonna go to part 3 of the in-depth horror discussion.